Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fresh Take podcast. My name is Ben.
My name's Becki.
And today we're going to do something a little bit different, a little bit more relaxed. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about the last year, the last 12 months, specifically from an academic point of view. So obviously this year has been a pretty interesting year for students all across the country, from being in college to sixth form to even still being at secondary school to university. No one has had a stereotypically normal year as a result of the coronavirus, as a result of lockdown and government restrictions. So in this episode, what we're going to do is we're just going to have a little chat about things we've taken from the last 12 months and things that we maybe didn't appreciate before that we do now. So Becki, the first question that I'm going to ask you is, if you had to sum it up, how has this year been for you?
I'm going to go with the word interesting.
Yeah, in inverted commas, interesting, yeah.
Might be the only way for me to actually describe the ups and downs of this year. I have nothing to compare it to. I think everyone in the world, unless you were here during the Spanish flu, have nothing to compare it to. It's unlike anything you've ever had to experience before. I think you can even tell in the podcast, they give a very good sort of timeline of the pandemic, because I remember doing those first lockdown podcasts that we did, and here we are now over a year later, still doing lockdown podcasts.
Yeah, I think
not even lockdown, remote podcasts.
Yeah, I think as well, like just looking at the whole podcast in general, if you go back to the very first episode, which was homesickness, I believe, we had 3 hosts. Now we only have 2 hosts, and the quality of the first 4 or 5 podcasts was a lot better to what we had, and now the quality from what we've had to what we have now is even better. And it's like the whole Fresher Take journey, I think, perfectly encapsulates, like you said, sort of how lockdown has been for a lot of people,
and how interesting the whole year has been.
Yeah. I think that's definitely going to be the buzzword of the podcast, which is interesting, because, like I said, there is nothing you can really compare it to, and the closest thing that I can think of it to is being grounded. Like that's how surreal this is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It is. It really is, and it's like when we're younger and your parents are like, nope, you can't go out, you've done this, you're not going anywhere. Except now the government is telling you can't go out, you're not going anywhere. And it's like, right, okay, I have to start actually, figuring out how to do my assessments to the same quality, with less, being able to just go to a lecture and be like, I had a question about the assignment, or, I didn't quite get this in a lecture. Now it's like scheduling a Zoom call or a Teams call to ask them that, and it is very different, and I think it was very hard on uni students. I certainly found it very peculiar, especially because I know you and I are very social people. We are very bubbly, we're loud, we like speaking to people.
If you haven't been able to tell from the podcast already, then I don't know what podcast you've been listening to for the last year, but very social people.
We like interacting with people, and then to have all of that taken away, not only personal life but uni as well, where you could speak to your people on your course or your lecturers or anything like that. To have all of that gone, it was, I'm going to use the word again, interesting.
Yeah.
There was good, there was bad. There's no other neutral word for me to describe it as other than interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree though, and I think if we're comparing you and I to each other, I think you probably had it maybe a little bit easier, I would say, simply because you were a second year when coronavirus hit. So you knew exactly what you were going to do. You knew exactly that you were going to go into third year, and whilst that was so up in the air, do you know what I mean? You sort of knew that that university would be your next sort of 12 months of your life, because you had another year to do. Whereas from personal experience, obviously I was in third year when coronavirus hit. I was halfway through my final film documentary, which was really interesting because we were halfway through filming it. We had, like, I'd say 80% of the footage, and then obviously everything started getting locked down. So for me, it was very, very interesting, to use that word again, because I didn't know what I was going to do. Everything got shut down. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't apply for jobs because no job sectors were open. Luckily, I already had a job, so it wasn't too bad. But obviously, I found solace in not knowing what I was doing, ironically, going back to uni, which is, I think, where, obviously, our common ground meets again, that you kind of knew, right, I've got, no matter what happens, I have to finish this final year of uni. Whereas I opted to add another year simply because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I think that kind of encapsulates lockdown for me, of taking risks and doing things that I never ever thought I was going to do. And again, I can't speak for you, but I think the ability to adapt, I think, is something that uni students and people, as a result of this lockdown, have definitely learned to do a lot more.
100%.
Yeah, and I think going, it perfectly sets us up really for expectations being so different, because obviously you going into your third year, you knew, right, I'm going to have to knuckle down, and me going into a master's not really knowing what to expect. What were your expectations of uni, and what were your expectations of what your third year was almost meant to be like versus what it was like? Has there been any massive differences, or do you think it is just the fact that you couldn't go to the pub, for example, and you couldn't meet up with friends?
I do remember being really optimistic about third year because no one thought that this would last this long. And we definitely thought that unis would be back open come October, because they pushed back the start date here and everything like that. And we were like,
Yeah.
yes. And they were. And we went in for like 3 lessons and then we locked down again.
God,
And
yeah.
I think there was like a moment of realization in November for me, and a lot of my friends were like, this is not going to be the third year we had planned. Like, this is not going to be, we know that. But I personally am really grateful for the third year, because I had to rely on my friends a lot. Like my housemates, we all did the same course, and my best mate, who lived across the road, like, we relied on each other a lot because we had no one else. We couldn't interact with anyone else. We had our bubble, and we stayed in it,
Yeah.
and we had to entertain each other basically. And so we found creative ways to do things, like, like barbecues in the back garden and stuff like that, instead of going out or going out to eat, trying to cook new recipes with each other instead of ordering in, and doing all of that stuff, especially when like half the takeaways in Lincoln were closed and you
Yeah.
couldn't get anything anyway. So I'm really grateful for like that side of it.
Yeah.
But there will always be a part of me that's kind of like, it's just not the third year that I was supposed to have. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I no, I totally agree, and I think I was sort of the same, really. I knew that this Masters would never be the same, and I kind of went into it very different to how I went into my undergrad, my BA, because I went into my BA thinking this is going to be the best 3 years of my life. I'm going to meet new people. I'm going to do loads of amazing things. I'm going to, have a good time, which I'm very lucky to say that I definitely did. Obviously, the last few months were a little bit quiet because of coronavirus, but all in all, I think I was quite good. So I went into my masters kind of with this mentality of, listen, I'm not going to be able to do anything for the next year. The next 12 months are pretty much a write-off, so I may as well do something that's going to enhance my ability to get a job later down the line, which is then now, if that makes sense. So I kind of went into a master's with the mentality of, listen, I'm just going to go in here, I'm going to learn the skills, and I'm going to leave. Because I knew that I couldn't have that university experience again, because when I applied for the masters, we were already in lockdown, so I couldn't, I couldn't get another flat because that was already, or another house because that was already off the cards. All of my friends that I'd met at uni, who are now obviously my very close friends, they'd all moved home as a result of lockdown. So I pretty much done my entire masters on my own from home. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, because I did journalism as an MA, it's a practical based course. So we were very lucky that we were able to return to campus. What was it? February, March time. So I've had
Yeah.
some face to face, workshops and stuff, which has been great because I've met some incredible people that are gonna, again, similar to what at uni, be friends for life. So I think because I went into it with quite low expectations of, oh, it's just gonna be another way for me to spend the next year, get some skills, and then sort of kick on with life. I think this year's been it's not been enjoyable to the extent that university is meant to be, but I think it's definitely been bearable to the point where I don't regret anything that I've done. I think that's the big thing. If I don't look back at the last sort of 12 months and go, I really wish I didn't do that, because there's
Yeah.
nothing worse than not being able to do anything. So the things that you are doing, you regret. And I think and again, you're probably the same, but I'm very lucky that I don't really regret anything really in the last year.
I'm with you. Like, genuinely, if I can look back at this year and think anything, it's that I I lived life to the fullest that I
Yeah.
possibly could, especially in those moments where lockdowns eased. I lived life absolutely. I went and did things. I worried so much less about things like money and
Mm,
income and everything like that, because I had had money from not being able to do anything. Like,
yeah.
I had been working, I got a job during lockdown, and so I had been doing that work, and that was really good to go and interact with people and see people. And like, I'm really thankful that I had got that job, because I stayed in Lincoln the entire time. I didn't go back home. And
Yeah.
so
Wow.
for me, it was it was completely different because I was removed from all of my loved ones. And so I had to find ways to interact with people, just to remain sane, basically, and like just to be like happy to get those moments of social interaction. And I think what I can look back and say is that I did everything. Like,
Yeah.
I tried so many new things this year, so many new activities, and just because we were like, well, why not? You might as well. We couldn't for so long, so we might as well now.
Yeah.
And that's what I really really enjoyed about the last year.
I think that's a really good thing that obviously you live with friends. I think that's the one thing. I said I don't regret anything. I think the one thing that I would change would be that me and all of my friends had already committed to a contract.
Mm,
So we would all be living together, because then again we would have been able to do what you did and sort of live that life almost quite creatively in the way that we did things. Obviously, me and the boys, we rinsed Zoom quizzes for a year, and having a Saturday night on Zoom. We've done that. We've rinsed it. Netflix party or whatever it's called. Watching Netflix together. Me and my girlfriend. We've rinsed everything that we needed. FaceTime and Zoom have been like my best friends for the last 12 months. But again, I don't really regret it. I just think that because obviously we couldn't do anything anyway,
yeah,
because I was stuck to living with family. I think the social side of it is what I've missed a little bit. But again, I don't regret it, because I think that I wouldn't be the person I am now if I did that, because I would just be like, oh, I'm with my mates, it's fine, it's great. Whereas because I was here on my own, I was like, no, I've got to stick to my initial plan, which was get my masters, get the skills, and move on. And I think
yeah.
that's what we're starting to do. So the next question I'll ask then, Becki, is, have you found it? Is there anything in last year that you found tough? We've talked about all the good things that have
I
happened. What have
I
you
was just
found
about to
that's
ask you that.
yeah, yeah? What? Well,
I was
great
just about
minds.
to ask you, what did you think was the hardest part? Because for me, I think more than like everything being online and blah blah blah, and perhaps as a result of everything being
Mm,
online, motivation. Motivation to keep going, to
yeah.
continue doing, handing in
Yes.
assignments, to
Yes.
continue showing up to those 9 a.m.s where no one's actually listening and the lecturer's just talking at you, and then he's going to ask you a random question and you don't know what's going on. Motivation to just keep going, because there have been some moments, I cannot lie, where I just wanted to pack it in, where I was
Yeah.
just going to defer for a year and like be like, look, I'll come back when this is all over and I can actually like be in third year. But I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's like the need to push on, like I want to graduate with my friends.
Yeah,
That's it's April, but it's coming.
yeah,
Like it will get there. I want to be able to graduate with my friends. I want that experience, and I was like, that's what kept me going because I lacked motivation at so many points during this year, and I do think that is one of the very big things about remote learning is that you remove yourself completely pretty much
yeah,
from that study environment,
yeah,
so it's very hard by yourself on your own accord to go off and create a study environment for yourself.
yeah,
Like I was very
definitely.
thankful when like Minerva and all the buildings here at uni opened up again because then I would go there and I knew that when I was there I was studying, I was doing my assignments, I was doing my dissertation, everything that I needed to do. But before that it was rough.
Yeah, I
It was very
100%
rough.
agree with you. 100% agree with you. But obviously, because I lived at home and obviously I had to travel in, obviously that sort of is emphasised or amplified, let's say, because obviously
Yeah.
I can't just walk into town because it's not possible. But for me, it was the second and third lockdowns that really were a bit of a bummer because the first lockdown everyone was like, well, I think I saw a TikTok on it that was like the first lockdown was quite literally TikTok dances, doing 5Ks, baking, and being like, "Oh, we've got 2 weeks off work. How great!" Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
everyone was we were all so blissfully ignorant and blissfully so
Yeah.
clueless about what was going on that everything was great. It was Zoom call central. It was running on 5K, so I was probably in the fitness of my life back in June last year. And then the second and third lockdown, I think we all sort of realised the severity of what was going on, and I think it was that sort of created that slump in motivation because it was, oh wow, literally, I can't go out. Oh wow, I
Yeah.
can't go see my friends because this virus is so very deadly. And
Yeah.
I think it was that sort of overrun people.
Yeah,
I
you're
think, and
definitely right.
and because you're on your own as well, it's so easy to just get in your own head and just think why is this is so unfair, this is because everyone's in the same boat, but as soon as you remove the ability to do things you instantly sort of like, well, what can I do, what is there to do?
Mm.
And I think that was definitely a big challenge for me as well, of the lack of motivation, but also the mental health side of things. I think my mental health has never been, well, was never as bad as it was as a result of lockdown, because you're in this closed environment all the time that you can't really escape it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to, if you're feeling down, normally you'd go, I'll go to the pub with my mates for a couple of drinks, that'll cheer me up, or I'll go for a walk or something. But when you're limited to literally leaving the house for exercise and going to the shop, it's so easy to see the negatives in life, I think. And I think that was definitely
Yeah.
something for me that I was more looking for the negatives as opposed to in normal life. Obviously, the negatives, you take the negatives as they come. Whereas with this year, I was sort of looking for the negatives, which made the negatives so much worse. Which in turn, going back to what you said, sort of affected motivation, definitely. Because there is nothing worse than being sat in your room, not allowed to leave your house. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I can't think of anything worse than that now.
Yeah. I think as well, this is something that is going to stay with us and going to like inform a lot of what we do for like the rest of our lives, really.
Yeah,
Because I was saying to you before we started recording, I've had interviews and everything like that, and they talk about their return to the office and what that's going to look like. And a lot of companies now will not be returning full time.
yeah,
And as people who are going into the workplace and are learning still and have expected, to go from uni to a 9 to 5 job
yeah,
that's in person, it's going to be a challenge and it's going to be another challenge. And whilst I absolutely
yeah,
understand the benefits of like remote working for people, especially when you have families and, things like
yeah,
that, it also opens up so many opportunities for people to not have to relocate or move their whole lives somewhere now. If you can work from Manchester but your job's in London, then that's amazing if you're the right
mm,
person for that job. I think it's just something that as uni graduates, well, I'm soon to be uni graduate, you have to wrap your head around. You have to understand
Yeah,
and really come to the idea that you're going to have to start or continue rather learning from afar,
yeah,
learning from a distance, and really making the most out of the experiences you have over Teams calls and over Zoom calls and online and emails and everything like that. It's that realization that yeah, this isn't the end.
no, I think,
Like
yeah, going on from what you said there, Becky, I think that taking a positive from that, from what you were saying, is sort of the word resilience. I would say
yeah,
because
100%.
you've now become we're now in a generation where we have become so much more resilient of working from our own devices. It's not as easy now as just rocking up to like I said, rocking up to a lecture and going, "I need some help." Sometimes because people are busy, an email might take a couple of days for someone to get back to you, so you can't rely on that. You have to sort of figure it out yourself. And I know that is the whole point of uni, of independent study and all this, but that's definitely been amplified so much more as a result of lockdown and a result of the last 12 months is that and whilst it's sometimes seen as a bad thing, you could take the skills that you've learned for the rest of your life. You're going to be so much more
Yeah,
resilient. You're going to be able to work better in a solo situation, but also you'll be able to use your team so much more because you now understand exactly what you need to ask them. There's
yes,
so many
exactly.
times, and I know this is probably the same with you. So many times have I gone into like a meeting, a 3 hour meeting with friends trying to get work done, and because you know that you don't have to do it, you spend probably an hour talking, an hour doing work, and then an hour thinking, should we do something else now? Whereas now, I
Yeah,
think because we've not had that time, we cherish it so much more. So, for example, if we have a 3 hour meeting, I am now going to use that 3 hour meeting to do work, and then after that, cherish that social time because
yeah,
I've now been able to, in my head, disassociate being around people with, always having a laugh and stuff.
yeah,
And I probably
yeah.
think I've worded that horrendously. I'll blame
No,
lockdown for
I
my
get
lack of
you.
communication.
I get you 100%. I think like these lockdowns have sort of produced a generation of like innovative people. Like it's really fostered ingenuity in the way that we interact with other people and in the way that we use our time, and has really taught us, or taught me especially, how to sort of like cut through the fat when you're talking to someone,
Yeah,
how to get to a point, how to be short and sharp and decisive, and and how to sort of believe in yourself more when you are doing something, because someone isn't always there to
yeah,
hold your hand or to ask questions or to anything like that. To just give everything a go, and especially when it comes to your work, really give everything a go, and then be like, look, this is what I've done, this is what I've produced. What do you think? what
yeah,
what are what are your comments on that, or like what are your feedback? What's your feedback on that? And I think that is something that is very valuable in the workplace, is to be able to stand sort of by yourself and do work, but also then come together and
mm.
also work as a team. It is something that is very valuable, and it's something that is going to be taken on throughout life, and it's something that lockdown has helped bring out in me especially.
I guess you could take that though as almost confidence, like self confidence,
Mm,
because you've not got
yeah,
someone there all the time necessarily sort of holding your hand like you said and being like, this is great. Like there's been so many times now where I have taken a piece of work that, for example, I would have done, say if it's a 1,000 word essay, I'll probably would have done 250 to 500 words and then gone to my tutor, what do you think? Whereas now I will take a 1,300 word report to him and go, what do you think? Because I'm so much more confident in, right, I need to give this meeting 100%, and like you said, cutting through the fat of a conversation. And so if I go into a meeting with 500 of the 1,000 words, it's kind of like, well, yeah, you've done all right, but if you've got more stuff to show someone,
mm,
they can help you. And that in a way is cutting through the fat of, you're making your work easier for you because you've got that. All you have to do then is quite literally cut through the fat of your essay as well. Go, no, 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 there we are, we've got a complete essay. because
yeah,
because you, because you haven't got time to be going, oh, I don't know, oh, I'm unsure. Do the pre-work first, because then it makes you're making a better use of your time when you have that contact with your tutors. And I think that ties in perfectly with what you were saying about making yourself more resilient and innovative, that people are going to be able to do the work more on their own. So then when you have a team of people, like, for example, you're going into PR, I'm going into media and journalism, when that team comes together, you've all got so much more work as a collective. So, you know, you've almost half the work, because you've got, you know, 2 times the work what you need. So then your work later down the line is easier, because you've done more work beforehand, because of that ability to have confidence in yourself and be like, no, I can do this work. I do know what I'm on about, but I just need that little bit of guidance, as opposed to relying so much on the guidance of others. And I think that's a really good thing, you know? Like, yes, it's been awful that we've been locked down and we can't see our friends and we can't go to the pub. I get that. But looking at it on like the flip side, it's been really good for individual brilliance, I think, would be a good way to put it.
No, that is a perfect way to put it, because I was just about to say, I think it's taught you what you do and don't need, because I think humans are sort of like, we like stuff, you know? And a lot
Yeah.
of the time you're measured, like your success is measured by how much stuff you have or have accumulated. Whereas I've seen such innovative and sort of like clever ideas and advertisements. I saw a girl on TikTok make like her own ad for Pepsi, and it genuinely looked like something they would have produced on TV. And she did it from her room with a camera and her laptop. Like, and it just proves that you don't need all of these things. You can be just as good and amazing without all of this stuff. And it
Yeah,
really
definitely.
has grown that self-confidence in people and shown people what they do and don't need, and other ways, other paths to get to the same place.
Yeah. It's almost like YouTube, isn't it, really? Like, the beginning of YouTube was just people talking to a camera, and now it's like
Yeah.
multi-million pound productions and stuff. Whereas, like you said, you don't need all that stuff. If you've got the ability, you don't need all this stuff to back up that you can do it. You just need yourself and, you know, the basics to be able to make something great. And I think
Yeah.
that's definitely something that's come out of lockdown. And kind of ironically, we've turned the negatives sort of straight on their head, which is, you know, another thing I think we're a generation of, is taking something and looking in the face of adversity and going, bring it on. What's the
Yeah.
worst? What's the worst that can happen now? I've literally been through
I've
12
lived through
months.
a panic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't leave I couldn't leave the house for months. If you're going to say I've got an extra, you know, assignment to do, bring it on. Like, I can do it, you know.
Yeah.
Or I've got 2 hours less to do a hand in. Bring it on. You know, 2 hours is nothing now, because
Yeah.
we appreciate everything we've got so much more, and the value of that, especially time, that we,
A hundred
you know.
percent.
So what I will ask then, Becki, again, sort of the final wrap up of this episode, let's say, is, what have you learned from lockdown? What would you recommend from the last 12 months? And if you had to give someone like advice, you know, what would that advice be, just in life now? Because I assume, if you're like me, you've definitely learned a lot about yourself over the last 12 months. So what have you done well? What are you happy with? And what advice would you give to people? Deep in
I
it.
would
Deep in it.
say that, I know, honestly, I would say that I've done well, sort of like pushing on and pushing through, and really showing the resilience in myself.
Mm,
I've learned so much. What? I've learned to be more confident in myself. Like, I always had a confidence,
mm,
and I think that comes from the fact that I'm like a quite bubbly person. I'm
yeah.
sociable. I speak to people, but then I would have those moments of doubt, and now I think to myself, no, look, I know that I'm probably along the right lines. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it. And then I'm going to take that feedback, whether it's positive or negative, and use it to better myself. And I think probably one of the biggest sort of pieces of tip, sorry, that I could give anyone would just to be, don't over plan everything. Plans seldom work out. Like, I plan to have a very different third year to what actually happened.
Yeah, yeah.
They seldom. come to fruition in the way that you think they are going to. A
Mm.
lot of my opportunities this year and a lot of sort of the fun parts of the year have just been random things and spontaneous things. Yes, there is time for planning in your life, and there are some things that you should definitely plan, but those others you can let loose a bit, and letting loose is going to help you so much with all of those other more serious things.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
I'm completely in agreement with you that, you know, I don't plan as much as I used to. Because again, your expectation of what life is isn't always going to be what you want it to be, you know. Case in point, literally the last 18 months, you know, I expected to have graduated and have a job and yeah, I'll be great. Whereas now I'm actually doing a master's, which in turn has actually probably been one of the best decisions I've ever made. So I definitely agree with you of don't plan. And I also think I kind of live by the motto now of like, what's the worst that can happen? You know, like
Yeah.
you said, I alluded to it a second ago of we've literally been through a global pandemic. Yeah, we have as a generation, as a community, as a universe, let's say, we have got through one of the hardest 18 months of human history, really. So what is the worst that can happen in any situation? You're nervous about asking a girl out on a date. What's the worst that can happen? You're worried about getting a job interview and getting rejected. What's the worst that can happen? You're worried about, you know, trying something new. What is the worst thing that's going to happen? You know, like
Yeah.
why not? We've been, or there have been so many opportunities where our freedom and our desire to do things has been taken away from us through, of course, the necessity of keeping people safe. So why now, when we have that ability to go out and be free, in loose quotation marks, why wouldn't you take the opportunity to do something? You know, yeah, you might not necessarily want to, or you might be apprehensive. Fair enough. You may have other issues that stop you from doing that. Again, fair enough. But if you boil it down to what is the worst thing that can happen to you if you do this thing, and I can
Yeah.
guarantee you the actual worst case scenario is so much better than the scenario you've made up in your head. Because, you know, time is so important. You know, your two most important assets in life are time and money. So what is the, you know, and because the last 18 months have been so hard for people, what is the worst thing that can happen to you? You know,
Yeah.
like, I don't think I can emphasize that enough. Like, we've been through a crap 18 months, and it has been, you know, really not fun. Some bits have been fun, but overall it's been quite hard for people. So now you're able to do things. Why stop yourself? Why limit yourself? You've grown so much as a person, and I'm almost looking at the camera here being like, you have grown so much as a person. Why not show the world how much you've grown? You know, you might meet a friend that you've not spoke to for 18 months, and they might meet you and be like, you are a completely different, this is a, you know, wow. Everyone has grown so much as a person, and just that's how I'd end the podcast, really, of what is the worst thing that can happen. And if we are, do you know what? If we are going to throw like an activity to do, as we do with every podcast, that would be my activity. Just go out and do it. What is it? Whatever you want it to be. If you want to book a skydive, go and book a skydive. You know, if you want to swim with dolphins, go swim with some dolphins. If you want to ask that girl, boy, whoever, out on a date, do it. Because what is the worst thing that can happen? It's not like the worst thing that happens is we get put into lockdown again, and you haven't got to deal with the consequences. But that's not good for anyone. You know? And it's, you know, that's a mad way to end a podcast, but I think that kind of just encapsulates how mad this last 18 months have been. Really.
That is true. Yeah.
And we'll go back to that. It's definitely been interesting. And, you know, it's done now. We've had a good time. We've reviewed the year. It's all good. And if you are looking, perfect segue, if you are looking for more interesting student-based content, where can you go, Becki? Well, you can go to UOL Student Life on all social medias, and also go to our website, which is studentlife.lincoln.ac.uk, for the best student-based content around. Look at that look at that for a segue. As always, if you enjoyed this and you want to listen to more or you want to watch more, make sure you follow us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, any other major podcast provider. We're on there. and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is, again, UOL Student Life, if you're watching the visual element of the podcast. Because, we don't just offer, we're not just a voice, we have faces as well. So, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, website, it's all there for you to enjoy. Go out and enjoy it. And as always, I've been Ben.
I've been Becki.
Thank you very much for watching or listening, and until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.